This is Sports Spectrum, the sports and faith podcast where we bring Jesus into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the show. My name is Jason, and I'm so glad that you guys are tuning into our show today. A couple of places to start where you can get in touch with us. First, our website, sportspectrum.com. It's a great place to go for all of our content here at the Ministry of Sports Spectrum. Podcasts, devotionals, articles, stories, the intersection of sports and faith. You need to bookmark that website and go there each and every day with new content over at sportspectrum.com. And then my email address, you can reach me directly, jason@sportspectrum.com. That's the email address, jason@sportspectrum.com. Maybe you have a guest idea, a story idea, maybe some thoughts on today's show, content interview with Steve Sonderman as we talk about men and men's ministry. You can email me directly, jason@sportspectrum.com. And we are presented today by Ronald Blue Trust and their advisors applying biblical wisdom and technical expertise to help their clients make wise financial decisions to experience clarity and confidence and leave a lasting legacy. It's wealth management strategies and trust services based on biblical principles. Ronald Blue Trust. I'll tell you a little bit more about them coming up on the show, but we love them. And if you have questions right now during these uncertain financial times, they are the place to turn to. Check them out at ronblue.com for all of your financial needs. ronblue.com. Our guest today on Sports Spectrum is Steve Sonderman. He is the president and founder of No Regrets Men's Ministry, and this ministry is designed to help equip men to be godly leaders in the home, in the church, in the workplace, and all around the world. He does a great job explaining the importance on this being a disciple-making ministry. And we go into what that means to be discipled and the importance of being discipled and not just attending church and not just going to a little bit of a men's lunch or a men's breakfast, but being discipled and then making a disciple becoming a person who then makes more disciples. And that's how this whole thing in the Christian world works, in helping others know Jesus as their Lord and Savior and grow in their walk. This is a great conversation with Steve Sonderman, whose passion to see every local church have its own ministry to men is so awesome. And he joins us here today on Sports Spectrum. Take a listen. Steve Sonderman, welcome to Sports Spectrum, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great, Jason. Hey, thanks so much for having me. It's really a joy just to be a part of your show today and to talk about ministry to men and what God's doing here in this country and around the world.
Yeah, I always say we have a crisis on our hands, and there's a lot of different crises that we're living through in 2020. But I believe men in the church, there's a real crisis there. We've seen it here in our church in Connecticut, just in men being all in for the Lord. And so before we go deep into that, and this may actually be part of your answer here, let's talk about what No Regrets is. Can you tell us about what No Regrets specifically is and the ministry?
Yeah, No Regrets. We started 28 years ago, so we've been around for a little bit. And really, it's a ministry that has a purpose of launching a disciple-making ministry in the world. And what we do is we come along churches. We want to help them, equip them to start a disciple-making ministry in their church. And so really the majority of what we do is working with leaders, pastors, volunteer leaders, and helping them understand, how do I reach men for Jesus? How do we root them in Jesus and really take them deep? How do we then release them for kingdom impact so that every man finds their place of service in the church? And then how do we reproduce leaders? And so really helping churches understand that entire spiritual pathway for men and having an effective ministry to men. So that's sort of what we do. We do it in a number of different ways, but bottom line, it's about disciple making and just launching a movement of that around the world.
We'll go a little bit deeper into that idea of disciple making, because I think in the past, in different men's conferences that I've been to, but also men's events at our own church or in other churches here in Connecticut in the Northeast where I live, you know, it starts with a men's breakfast. We have a speaker, a bunch of men come, and hopefully there's some fellowship going on. But this disciple making aspect is so vital but it also requires a little bit extra work and going deeper. Can you share a little bit about what disciple making is in your eyes?
Yeah, that's a great thing, because so often for churches, their ministry to men is event based, and so whether it's the breakfast or the golf outing or the retreat and the conference, whatever, and those are good things, and those can be very helpful things. But at the root, it's all about relationships and investing in a small group. And so what I did when I was at Elmbrook as the men's ministry pastor for those 28 years is I really lived by the philosophy of having a big enough vision to think small, and taking the principle that we see in the life of Jesus of never worrying about the crowds, but just investing in a small group of men. So what I did is I asked 12 guys to join me on a Tuesday morning at 6 a.m. and 12 guys to join me on Wednesday morning. And they had 2 hours of homework every week. We met for 2 hours, and for 9 months, it was very intentional. And we talked about what does it mean to walk with Jesus and building those spiritual disciplines into our lives. We talked about how faith and work come together, about how you share your faith, how you lead your family, how to grow your marriage. We talked about very specific things to help equip these men to be godly men in their home, church, workplace, and world. At the end of the first year of working with those 24 guys, I said, who wants to do this again? And 16 out of the 24 said, we want to lead a group next year. Well, I thought, there is no way we're going to get 16 groups next year. And so the best thing I ever did is put those guys together so that they could lead their group together. So we did 9 groups the next year, then 12 groups the next year, then 14 groups, then 16 groups. And every year they were looking for apprentice leaders. And we just sort of launched this movement with literally a couple thousand guys at Elmbrook going through this discipleship process of one man building into other men and equipping them and encouraging them and empowering them to have a noble view of manhood, to understand servant leadership, to understand what does it mean to walk with Jesus on their own. And so it wasn't about the big events. We didn't even start doing events till down the road. All we did were these small groups where we met together to share together, pray together, study together, and then grow together. And so when I talk about discipleship, I'm talking about an intentional process of helping a man to find Jesus, grow up in Jesus, and then be released to serve Jesus. And it takes intentionality for that to happen.
I think a lot of churches struggle with finding the leader, right? Because there's always a title designation, the men's leader of our church, the men's ministry leader of our congregation. And a lot of churches struggle with that. I know we have up here in the Northeast. Is that something that you've seen consistently throughout a lot of the churches that you've worked with? But then how would you recommend in trying to find that person who could lead the men and has a passion for the men?
Yeah, I would. And it's definitely an issue because I think most men feel ill-equipped to lead a small group and to do this work. And yet these guys oftentimes are leading multi-million-dollar companies, right? And they're leading these organizations, and they feel like once they walk into the church, they have to be someone else, and they can't do it. And so what I have found is that men need to be encouraged, and they need to be affirmed that they can do it. But where do you start to answer your question? Let me start. I'm going to talk with the pastors first. I think one of the roles of the pastor is to do this himself, to model this, just to start with 3 or 4 guys that you would hand choose and that you would start meeting with on a weekly basis. And if you did that just for several months, maybe up to 6 months, they would then have the tools they need to do it with other men. And they're going to be able to run this whole thing for you as a pastor. But I would just encourage the pastors listening out there to start this process with themselves, finding a few guys. If the pastor just says, I just can't do it, then what I would have him do, what I would look for is one, a guy that has a interest in ministry to men, that he's shown some interest in it, and he's talked about it in the past. He's been coming to that men's breakfast. He's been showing up on a regular basis. Second, that He's available. Some guys just are not available because they have so much going, they don't have the bandwidth to do it. So there has to be that availability for them to do something like this. And just looking and praying at those type of events, and then just hand selecting. And I believe it's important. You're not going to get a guy to do this by putting it in the bulletin, by just making a broad statement. They have to be personally approached. And I call this a meeting with a purpose, where I get together with a guy over breakfast or over Zoom, over lunch, and I challenge them and I ask them to step into this role. And I make that personal invitation. I make the big ask. Nothing in the kingdom gets done without the ask. And so the pastor, the leader, making that ask and saying, here's what I'd like you to do. Would you lead this group? And be very specific. Here's when you start, here's when you finish, and here's what's involved. Guys want clarity in that ask.
And this actually transfers over into the sports world. People listening might be like, well, what does this have to do with sports? Well, if you're talking to athletes who are listening, if you're talking to team chaplains that are listening, if you're talking to coaches that are listening, this transfers over into the sports world, doesn't it?
Oh, it sure does. And having worked with professional athletes over the years, it's just a matter of, you still have to ask them, do you want to be in a small group? Will you lead the small group? Will you share your faith at this event? But it always comes down to making the ask. And I think oftentimes as a pastor, as a leader, for the chaplains that are out there, we're afraid to make that ask because we think men are so busy, they have so much stuff going on. But what I have discovered is that one of the key drivers for men is that they want to be involved in a cause greater than themselves. And they are looking for the hill to climb. They want to know, where are we going? What are we going to be about? And how are we going to make a difference? Today, men are sick and tired of just pushing papers and being on another committee. Men want to make a difference. And we are involved in the greatest cause in the world. And we get an opportunity to call men to be a part of this vision of changing the world, one man, one family, one community at a time. And so for me, when I get across that table and I get to make this ask, boy, it's one of the greatest privileges I have, because I am not ashamed of it. It's a part of what God's calling us to be a part of, and to get others to be a part of as well.
Today's Sports Spectrum show is presented and brought to you by Ronald Blue Trust. And Ronald Blue Trust, as we mentioned, their advisors applying biblical wisdom, technical expertise, helping their clients make wise financial decisions to experience clarity and confidence, leaving a lasting legacy. We all have questions right now regarding our finances, and they serve people across the wealth spectrum, from individuals who need everyday financial advice to multi-generational families who require complex family office services, and even business owners who need custom consulting. Their advisors are in 16 offices around the country, providing a complement of services, including financial retirement and estate planning, investment management, charitable giving strategies, bill paying, family offices, professional athlete services, institutional services, and even retirement plan consulting. We love Ronald Blue Trust, and I love that word trust, because that's what you can do when we're talking about Ron Blue. Ronald Blue Trust. They build strong relationships with their clients on trust, speak into their financial lives, and walk with them to help them realize financial and life goals. You got questions, they got answers. Reach out to them right now on their website, ronblue.com. Check them out at Ronald Blue Trust, ronblue.com. Steve Sonderman is our guest here on Sports Spectrum from No Regrets. I want to ask you about your journey to Christ. Tell us your story of faith and your testimony.
Yeah, I grew up right here in the Milwaukee area, and I was very involved in athletics growing up. Sports was my God. I went to church. I went to a mainline church and went every Sunday and did all the things I was supposed to do. But for me, truly, sports was my God. So whatever was in season, that was my favorite sport. So whether it was basketball or baseball or football, freshman year in high school, as a catcher making a throw down to second, I felt a twinge in my elbow. Went to the orthopedic surgeon the next day. He said, "We're going to take some x-rays." And so I went next door to the room, and the tech said, "We're going to take some x-rays of your back." I said, my back. I said, it's not my back, it's my elbow. I can't throw a stinking baseball. And she said, well, he wants pictures of your back. So they took some x-rays of the back, and then they, brought him in and they put him up on the big white screen. And when they put the pictures up on the screen, I just saw this huge S curve. And I go, oh my goodness, whose back is that? And they go, well, that's your back. They go, you have a serious case of scoliosis, curvature of the spine. And we're going to put you in this thing called the Milwaukee brace, which was this contraption with a little like leather around my waist with metal rods going up my back and this thing around my neck. And it was to push my back into place. And he goes, now you need to wear this 23 hours a day. You can take it off to shower and do your exercises. I said, well, Doc, I said, that's going to be a little problem because I said, I've got baseball practice at 3:00 today. He goes, well, you had baseball practice at 3:00 today. He said, those days are over. Well, Jason, that night I went home and I cried myself to sleep. And I said, God, what are you doing? I said, this is the only thing I love in life. This is what I enjoy. This is what I'm good at. This is where all my friends are. And you're taking this away? Well, that began a spiritual search for me. And so I started attending, some friends invited me to Elmbrook Church on Sunday nights. I started to get involved in the Fellowship of Christian Athletes at our local high school on Sunday afternoons. And all of a sudden, as I'm going through high school, it's starting to make sense. And it really came together at FCA in the spring of my senior year in high school, where we had a visitor. Actually, he was a minor league baseball player that came in, and he shared his story and shared about how he came to Christ, and he shared the gospel message. And all of a sudden, all that I knew from my background, all the things that I'd been reading now just came together and made sense for me. And I understood now what it meant, not just to be religious, but to have a personal relationship with Jesus. And so it was then that I gave my life to Jesus, and then I went off to college, and I got involved in every campus group there was: Campus Crusade, Navigators, Athletes in Action, Fellowship of Christian Athletes. You name it, I went to it, man. And I was just growing like a weed, and I just loved it. And unfortunately, because I had been so busy doing all these things, I didn't do real well in college. So I after my freshman year, I dropped out to say, okay, why am I going to college? Because I went to college because everyone's supposed to go to college. I didn't know I was going. I transferred back home, went to a local university to become a teacher and to become a coach. I started coaching high school football and all through college, and after college for 6 years, I was the varsity assistant coach, and I just loved coaching, and I thought, this is what I want to do the rest of my life. Well, at the same time, I started leading a Bible study over at the local high school where I was coaching, where I had attended. Well, that group started with 12 students. And over the next 6 years, it grew to 150 students meeting every Wednesday night in homes all over Brookfield. And all of a sudden, I was falling in love with ministry and discipleship. And so then the senior pastor at Elmbrook, Stuart Briscoe, said, would you do an internship when you're done with college? So I did a 1-year internship in college-age ministry. I loved it. And so then I went away to seminary. I went up to Bethel Seminary in the Twin Cities, did my 3 years up there for my MDiv, and I came right back to Elmbrook then, 36 years ago. And I started in the college-age ministry, and I worked with college students for 7 years. And after working with 7 years of college students, I was like, oh my goodness, Colleen and I had 4 kids of our own. I had 400 kids in this college age ministry. And I'm like, I'm so sick of bus trips and pizza parties and retreats. I went to Stuart and I said, Stuart, you got to get me out of here. I have enough kids of my own. And I said, I will do evangelism. I'll do missions. I'll do assimilation. I'll do prayer ministry. I'll do, evangelism ministry. I'll do any of those things. He said, let me think about it. He came back and said, Steve, here's what I want you to do. I want you to do men's ministry. He said, men's ministry? I said, that's not on my list. He says, I go, what do I do with men? I've never worked with a man in my life. And he said, here's what I want you to do. Do the very same thing you did with the college kids. Just try to act a little bit more mature. So for the last 30 years, that's what I've been doing. Wow. I've been just pouring my life into men and in training leaders both here in this country then and around the world. And Jason, you couldn't drag me out of that, because I just love what I'm doing. And I wake up every single day so excited to be a part of this and to see what God is doing in the lives of men all over this country and all over this world.
I love it. That's such a great story. And it's a great testimony. We use that word a lot to how God can call us into spaces and places that we don't expect or want to sometimes go into. I can tell you I'm living proof of that as well initially, but then when you get there, you realize you're right smack dab in the will of God. And it's such a great place to be with the men that you've been working with over the many years that you've been doing this. I'm curious, especially right now, and I don't just mean like right now as we're recording this, but right now, maybe even in 2020, what have you seen as the biggest crisis or the biggest concern or the biggest burden that men are facing right now that's really been impressed upon your heart?
Yeah, the Jason, the thing that's absolutely wrecking me today is the state of men in the situation in which we find ourselves. And when you isolate the issue, it's isolation. It's the lack of community. And we know the numbers that we're seeing right now with men, as far as, domestic abuse is up, sexual abuse is up, addiction, the alcohol and drug abuse is up, and the suicide rate is skyrocketing right now. And I've lost some family friends through that. And with all the furloughs and the unemployment and the uncertainty, the isolation issues, it is just taking a huge toll on the lives of men today. When men isolate, bad things happen. And so when you say what's the one issue, that isolation I see is huge. And so I'm just encouraging pastors and leaders and men just to get connected. And you can do it. You can do it digitally. You can do it online through Zoom or Google Meet. You can text one another. You can FaceTime one another. You can socially distance and get together and do it. But we just need to be together, because together is better than alone. And so life is hard, and this is a hard time. But guys don't have to go through this alone. And so as I'm working with leaders, I'm trying to encourage them, do everything you can to get your guys together in some shape, some form, so that they can see face to face, they can talk and to share and be real about what's going on in their lives. But that would be the one thing that's absolutely wrecking me right now.
Yeah, I concur. Just watching as an elder in my church and the different people I've been around, especially in 2020, I would concur that community is such a important and intentional thing that we all need to be pursuing in our lives, especially as followers of Christ. You got a really cool thing happening in early February of 2021 as we release this at the end of 2020. And I want you to share a little bit about the No Regrets Conference, because it's not just something that you have to be, whether it's in the Milwaukee area or wherever, you're traveling to it. This is something you can do right in your own church. Can you kind of share a little bit about what's happening with the conference?
Yeah, you bet. Yeah, the conference, this will be our 28th year for the No Regrets Conference, and started off just as a small gathering at Elmbrook just for our guys, and over the years has grown because of the interest and the desire. It's a one-day event, always the first Saturday in February. So this year it's February 6th, 2021. Almost always now Super Bowl weekend. It's pretty cool that the NFL decided to have it put the Super Bowl on the same weekend as No Regrets. It's just
perfect timing.
Cool. Oh yeah, and so the guys all come with their jerseys and they all get jacked up and so I think it was about 12, 14 years ago now, we would sell this thing out, 3,000 guys in literally 20 minutes. Wow. And we started having churches saying, hey, can we do this as well? And so through technology now, we can stream it out to churches all across the country, all over the world. Literally, we're in Canada, the Caribbean, in Europe. And And so it's, I think last year we had 110 sites. We were on campuses, on prisons, in churches. We had 25 small groups. And so it's just sort of grown, exploded right in front of us. Again, going back to what we said before, we didn't plan on this. We didn't think about this. I thought this was a one and done event, and God just took it and grew it. The purpose is to equip men to be godly leaders in their home, church, workplace, and world. That's the purpose. And so through this year, it's just, normally it's 8 hours. This year, we've cut it back to just 4 hours, 8:30 to 12:30 Central Standard Time. And we stream it out, and we have an incredible lineup of speakers this year. Jason is going to be one of our featured speakers, and so excited to hear him speak. And then we'll also be doing an interview later in the morning with him.
Yeah.
And then we have Eric Mason from Philadelphia, and he wrote a great book for men called Manhood Restored. And then Brian Carter, for a senior pastor in Dallas, is part of the series 33, the series for men, a great video series for men's small groups to use. And then Wilfredo de Jesus, a former pastor in Chicago, now a denominational leader and just a phenomenal speaker. And then Chris Brown from North Coast Church out in California. And Chris has been with us before, one of the guy's favorite speakers. So it's just an incredible lineup. And so the guys will just hear one speaker after another, and they'll just, on all the topics related to men: marriage issues, parenting issues, forgiveness, discovering your purpose, handling temptation, how do I grow as a man? And then Steve Carter will end the whole thing in the afternoon and talking about what does it mean to be, to go out and courageously make an impact in the world today. And so the theme for this conference this year is courageous, based on Joshua 1:9, where he says, be strong and courageous. Do not be terrified. And so we'll be talking about that throughout the course of the day. And so, yeah, for guys listening out there, there's three ways you can be a part of it. Number one, your church could be a host site. And if you're in a part of the country that can have guys coming together in a safe way, then you can stream it right into your fellowship hall or into your sanctuary. The second way is through a small group. And you might just want to have 2 or 3 guys over to your home. And we've put together the No Regrets Home playbook, and it gives you all the tools you need to just have a few guys over to your home and to experience the conference there. Or if you just say, you know what, I just don't feel safe getting in a small group or going to church, you can watch it right at home on your computer. And so if you go to our website, noregretsconference.org, that you could just right there in the landing page, you'll see all 3 of those choices: how to sign up as a church, as a small group, or as an individual. And so it's an incredible day to be encouraged, to gather with others, to get sort of that spiritual injection for the day, for the year, and to on what it means to follow Jesus and to be courageous in your faith.
That's awesome. A couple of things here for people listening. Let them, I want people to know, I would have interviewed Steve Sonderman anyways on this podcast. There's no doubt about it in this show, because we get to talk about men. But I am honored to be a part of the No Regrets Conference this year. And it's a great way to connect sports, to connect faith, to talk to the men. And like you said, to really give that theme out of being courageous in equipping men to be godly leaders in the home, in the church, at work, and in the world. So I'm really honored to be a part of it, Steve. I can't wait to go deeper and to talk to you and to share a message on forgiveness, and really just hopefully be a part of something that's bigger than any of ourselves here. And that's really the goal here, is to preach the gospel and see men changed for Jesus. And Steve Carter, of course, was on this show a couple months back, and I love Steve, and he's a good friend, and I'm really excited that he's going to be sharing as well. Again, the website is noregretsconference.org, and people can go sign up, whether it's through your church, whether it's through a small group, or just individually yourself. You can be a part of this, even if you can't travel or go anywhere, and still be a part of No Regrets Conference at noregretsconference.org. Steve, thank you again for being here on the show. I really appreciate it. My last question for you is the question we ask all of our guests here on Sports Spectrum. We've talked about what's burdening your heart. We've talked about a lot of things going on currently. but what is the Lord teaching you currently? What is God teaching and showing you right now in the stage of life that you're in? What's he been teaching you?
I would say there's a couple things, but I think the biggest thing is the intentionality it takes to stay connected. And so whether that's with my grandkids, I have 3 grandkids down in Nashville, and just the FaceTiming with them. It's having all 3 of our kids are in different cities: Baltimore, New York, and Nashville. We have one here in the Milwaukee area, but we just doing Zoom dinners with them and having times when we have dinner together and talk, or just FaceTiming with them on a regular basis and talking, or connecting with my leaders. But the intentionality it takes to stay connected in this time. And I think we're prone to isolate, to pull back, and I think we have to really battle that and fight that. The second thing is self-leadership. I'm talking to so many leaders around the country that are sort of being taken out because they're not caring for themselves. In this time of COVID, they're struggling because they're trying to keep their churches afloat. They're trying to keep their organizations afloat. They're trying to make things work. And as a result, they're not taking care of themselves, and just, eating right, getting exercise, getting the sleep, continuing to learn, continuing to lead, or continuing to learn and to read and to learn new things. I always say, when a leader stops learning, they stop leading. And so just those would be 2 things: the area of intentionality for community, and then self-leadership and caring for yourself in this time.
So vital. Steve Sonderman, thank you, my friend, from No Regrets. Really appreciate you joining us, sharing a little of your story, but really, I think, giving some great nuggets and some important pieces of wisdom, if you will, on manhood. And if people want to learn more, like I said, go to noregretsconference.org, sign up and be a part of that great event in early February 2021, Super Bowl weekend. Steve Sonderman, thank you, my friend. All the best to you.
Thanks, Jason. Really appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Many thanks to Steve Sonderman for joining us here on Sports Spectrum. We also thank our partners and sponsors today, Ronald Blue Trust, applying that biblical wisdom and technical expertise in helping clients make wise financial decisions. Right now is the time to reach out to Ronald Blue Trust with those questions as we near the end of the year, getting ready for 2021. A lot of uncertainty out there, a lot of questions that we have. Ronald Blue Trust is the place to turn to get those answers. Check them out at ronblue.com for all of your comprehensive financial services and objective advice. They have over 9,500 clients across the wealth spectrum in 50 states. Check them out at ronblue.com. Also want to direct you to our website, sportspectrum.com is a great place to check out all of our content here at the Ministry of Sports Spectrum. And then whatever app that you're listening to this podcast on, do us a favor, click that subscribe button so that you never miss an episode. Tell a friend about Sports Spectrum so that they can join in on the fun and hear how Jesus intersects with the world of sports here at Sports Spectrum. And then lastly, we have our Sports Spectrum podcast network now. So we have a slew of shows that you can now check out that are all a part of Sports Spectrum, including a brand new show called Recalibrated, hosted by Mallory Brown. And guys, today's topic with Steve Sonderman was more for you. Well, Recalibrated is for the ladies. And guys, you need to tune in as well, because we need to be better husbands by understanding our women, our wives. Recalibrated is going to be a great show for everybody to tune into, but it's particularly focused on the women. And Mallory's going to be interviewing all sorts of different women in the world of sports. Her first couple episodes were with the wives of a couple NFL players. First of all, Sarah Hasselbeck, Matt Hasselbeck's wife, a longtime quarterback in the NFL. And then Tamala Davis, who is Demario Davis' wife from the New Orleans Saints. Demario Davis, the all-pro linebacker in 2019. And we talked to the wives about parenting, about stewarding, about being a wife to an NFL player, and how God can move through all of that. It's a great conversation and a great podcast. Please go subscribe to the Recalibrated podcast, now part of the Sports Spectrum Podcast Network. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time right here on the show. My name is Jason. I love you guys. I hope you all have a great rest of your day.